Now, let me introduce today's presenter. Julisse Ortiz has a bachelor's degree in genealogy with a minor in family history and genealogy. Her research interests include Germany, England, the United States, and Poland. Julisse has completed an internship at Auschwitz-Birkenau, and she is a current intern at the Family Search Library in Salt Lake City as a German research specialist. We will now turn the time over to Julisse.
Thank you, Charlotta. Today's presentation is how to build quick trees. Objectives. Today, you will be able to understand what a quick tree is, learn how to build quick trees, learn tips and tricks to identify DNA matches with no trees, and lastly, identify living individuals and more recent generations. What is a quick tree? A quick tree is a tool used to identify the pedigree of a genetic match. It's used to verify a match's tree, identify the most recent common ancestor, and identify where a DNA match meets your own tree. And then when would you begin building a quick tree? It occurs after clustering. Your quick tree is going to be a workshop, a tree in process. Because it's a workshop tree, that means it's not necessarily well researched or complete. It may contain errors. And for starting the tree, you are going to want to add the starting person. This, most of the time, is going to be your DNA match that the tree that you are trying to identify or verify for your match. You're going to want to add the parents if known. The more information added, the greater the likelihood of hints. You are going to want to make sure that your tree is private and unsearchable. This is found in tree settings on Ancestry.com. Ancestry is where I always build my quick trees because Ancestry is private and Family Search is public. With DNA, they can be very sensitive matters, so we want to make sure that our trees are private and unsearchable so people do not stumble upon your research. This is an example of one of my DNA matches. To protect the privacy of this individual, I have made most of their tree, private here. But we have this one couple, Albert Milton Thomas and his wife, Lily Mae Thurman, who we are going to be focusing on today. And next, I am going to show how I would start and begin their tree on Ancestry. Here I am at Ancestry.com. I clicked on trees found in the left-hand side of the screen, and then I selected create and manage trees. And you get this page here. I want to create a new tree for my Thurman and Thomas branch. So on the bottom left-hand side of the screen, I'm going to select create a new tree. And I am going to add my home person. In this case, I'm just going to say my home person's last name is Thomas. And they are deceased. I am not, they're deceased here. And then I'm going to press that they're male, found in the middle of the page here, and mark that they are deceased. And then I'm going to press continue, found at the bottom left-hand side of the screen. Now I'm going to go ahead and add the father here, Albert Milton Thomas. And he is deceased, and based on that tree information, I know that he was born in 1883. And I am already familiar with Albert because he is one of my relatives. I know that he was born in Utah, so I'm going to add that information here. I'm going to select from the drop-down to get the best results. And then on the tree, it said he died in 1974. That's perfect. So I'm going to add the date there. And then I'm going to press once again, continue. And here it says that I can choose what I want to name the tree. I'm just going to leave it as the Thomas family tree. And this next box here, it says allow others to view this tree. People marked living are hidden. I do not want anybody to be able to find my tree, so I'm going to uncheck this box here. And then I'm going to press Save Tree here. And now I have my little tree here. I'm going to go add the wife of Albert Milton Thomas. Her name was Lily May Thurman. And she was female. She's deceased, so I'm going to change her status as deceased. She was born the same year as her husband, 1883. And I also know that she was born in Utah. So I'm going to add that information here. And she died in 1960. Perfect. And then I'm going to press save, found at the bottom right-hand side of the screen here. So now I have created my little tree here. I'm now going to want to check out my tree settings. So to do that, we're going to go to the same page that we were at before. So I'm going to select tree found at the left-hand side of the screen. And then I'm going to select create and manage trees from the drop-down. I have 2 trees here. I'm going to want to make sure that I follow this Thomas family tree because that's the one I just created. And at the right-hand side of the screen here, there is tree settings. So I'm going to select tree settings here. And then in the middle, I have privacy settings. If you wanted your tree public, you would, of course, select public. But since this is a DNA tree, we want them to be private and unsearchable. So I have already selected private, which is great. And I also want to prevent my tree from being found in searches. So I'm going to select that box also. And then I'm going to select Save Changes found at the bottom left-hand side of the screen here. And now my tree is private and unsearchable. There are 2 ways you can go back to your tree. You can select trees back found once again, and then I would select Thomas family tree, or over here at the left-hand side of the screen where it says Thomas family tree, I can select the drop down and select view tree. And this is where we will once again begin. But first, I want to talk about how I would go about adding another DNA match to this tree. So whenever I do a DNA project for one individual, just using their DNA, I like to put all of the DNA matches into one tree. This is really great because you're able to search for surnames, find connecting people, etc. if they are all in one tree. And to go about that, I would select this add relative here. And then I typically will select either brother or sister, depending on the gender of my DNA match here. So let's, for example, I'm going to add a sister here. And the person that I want to add here, my unconnecting person, so far I do not know how they connect to Albert Milton Thomas or Lily May Thurman. So this person, we're going to name them Jane Doe. She's female and living. And I don't have any of this other, information so far. But I always like to select an unknown mother or an unknown father because it creates less work for us, which we will see in a minute here. So then I'm going to press save here at the bottom right-hand side of the screen. And then I'm going to select siblings, and then I'm going to select Jane here, and then I clicked on her name anywhere in this little black box here, and then I'm going to select this profile here. And if I want her to be an unconnecting person, because I don't know how Jane here fits in with this family yet, I am going to select Edit, Found at the top right-hand side of the screen, and then I'm going to edit relationships. And I do not know how they fit in. And I know Albert Milton Thomas is not the father. So I'm going to select the X here at the top towards the right-hand side of the screen here. And then I'm going to select Remove. I no longer wish that Albert is connected to Jane here. And now I have created a floating person within the tree that I already created. And this is how you would go about adding additional DNA matches that you wish to add into your one tree that you made. So I am going to use the matches tree as a starting point, which I just showed you how to do. You're going to want to verify each generation with at least 2 primary sources. Don't take advantage of the suggested hints, but do not assume they are correct. Do not work only within hints. If you only work within the suggested hints, you are going to limit yourself. So use other databases, newspapers, etc. You can refer to online trees for hints, but within those trees, you are going to want to evaluate the sources. Do not add individuals solely because they are suggested. Those suggested individuals come up in green on Ancestry, and I'll show you an example of those suggested individuals. And you are going to want to avoid adding pictures or documents or newspapers, etc., that other individuals have added to their Ancestry accounts. If you do this, it tags your account. You can add and upload pictures or documents to your own private and unsearchable Ancestry account, and you are totally fine to do that. It's only when you add something that somebody else has uploaded that your account will be able to be seen. And I'll show you an example of what those pictures and documents look like. So once again, this is the tree that we are starting with. We're going to go back now to Ancestry and look to see how we are going to evaluate the hints. I'm going to go back to my tree, so I'm going to select Thomas Family Tree, the drop down, and then View Tree. And then I'm going to select Thomas on the bottom left-hand side of the screen here to view my original tree. And these green individuals here are the suggested or potential individuals. So I don't know for sure yet if these potential individuals are the correct parents here. So I'm going to want to look at the sources and the hints to see if I can find any matches. So I'm going to select on Albert Milton Thomas here, and then I'm once again going to select Profile. And he has 22 hints here. Hints is found towards the middle of the page here. And those photos or documents that I was mentioning earlier, these are these member photos. Anything titled member photos, you know that someone else has already uploaded those. In this case, this one is an obituary. So I'm going to click on the obituary here. And I can see that the photo was originally shared by this user here. And in other cases, you are able to see exactly who it is saved by. Right here, we see it's saved by this individual. And if I were to save this newspaper to my account, I would also show up as saved by. So to avoid that, I'm going to leave this obituary into my hints. So I can come back to it. It will always be here if I need to refer to it in the future. And if I were to press ignore, I would no longer see this hint and it would disappear from my suggested hints. So I just want to leave it where it is. Put an X out of that there. With these hints, there are two different ways that you can go about looking at the hints. The first is you can always press the review button found at the bottom of the suggested record hint here. If I click on review, it will populate in a new tab, and you can go about looking at the information this way. This is one way to do it. And the other way is to click here on this US Bind and Engrave Index. I always like to right click and open link in new tab. So I can toggle back and forth between my page of the individual and also the hint here. The hint here is from Find a Grave. And I always recommend that you look at the original, even if, it's a headstone or a census, no matter the record, you should always look at the original. The original is often going to offer more information than the index. And the index can also have wrong information. So the original is always best to look at it. So here I get this information about Albert Milton Thomas. I have his birth date, his death date, where he's buried, etc., and some additional information. I'm going to go ahead and click on this Find a Grave link here. And then I can click on this photo here, and I see if you click on View Original found at the bottom right-hand side of the screen here, it opens it up into a new tab, so it's quite larger to see here. I see my birth dates and my death dates of Albert here on the stone, and the same as his wife here. So this is a really great source that provides some additional information about his birth and death dates here. And I know that this is for Albert, so I am going to say yes at the bottom left-hand side of the screen here. This record does match my person. And the left side here is going to be what is found in the record, and the right side is what you currently have in your tree. So to be able to add the information over to my tree, you're going to want to make sure that you check the applicable information that you would like to see moved to your tree. So I am going to select that I want to change the birth date there and also the birthplace. And I'm also going to check this death date. And I see that Find a Grave has these parents. I'm going to want to make sure that I find a few additional sources that verify that Robert Henry Thomas is really Albert's father. But for now, I'm going to add them into the tree here. And then I'm going to want to select this new information. I'm going to check mark it for Lily for her birth date, birthplace, and also death date. And then we are going to scroll down and select Save this information to your tree, found at the left-hand side of the screen here. I would just go through and keep looking at the sources till I felt comfortable extending the generations, and I would want to find at least two sources that help solidify those parents found in the Find a Grave. And how do we go about identifying recent generations? I really like newspapers. We there's often privacy restrictions with vital sources and censuses, so I have to look at some additional sources. One of those is newspapers. You can go to Google Newspapers, Google, of course, newspapers.com, Genealogy Bank, Newspaper Archive. And lastly, I really like Googling the city and county or county that you are looking for, along with the words newspaper archive. And let me show you an example of that search here. So for example, I am looking for Salt Lake City newspapers. So I'm going to type in Salt Lake City newspaper archive just into Google here. And the first result I get is from the University of Utah about Utah digital newspapers. This looks quite great. So I'm going to select this little link here. And I see that they have at least the Salt Lake Tribune, which is great. And I can go through, and I'm going to X out of the Salt Lake Tribune here at the top. And then if I scroll down, it tells me that they have all sorts of papers found in Utah. So this is a really great site if I'm looking for Utah newspapers. And I just found that by, Googling that little phrase there. And also social media. So for Instagram, you're going to want to pay attention to the followers, the following, and also the bio. For Facebook, the likes, comments, about section, and friends. For Facebook, you are going to want to look at other family members. They might have different followers, pictures, etc. For Pinterest, you are going to want to look at following and followers, and also LinkedIn can also be a good one. But with a note with LinkedIn, they are able to tell if you viewed their profile. So that is one just to be a little wary of there. And for public records, you can use Been Verified and People Finders. And you can get some hints from matches. So this is an example of one of the matches that I had. This individual has been privatized to protect his privacy here. But I have Matthew Blackburn, and I noticed that he was managed by a test here, by a different user. And that people who are typically managed for their DNA tests, these individuals might be older, and their children might be managing their test. So I went thinking that might be the case here for Matthew, but I had a really hard time identifying who exactly Matthew was. So what I did was I Googled the username of the individual who was managing this test. And I came across a Pinterest with the same username. And since the username was the same and the username was quite unique, I thought that, it's likely that this Pinterest and the person who is managing, this DNA test are one and the same. So I looked at who is following this individual on Pinterest, and I was able to identify some of the profiles on Facebook, and I determined that they were from the same geographic area. So I knew that my test taker and also the manager of the test likely had some connection to this area. And I also had a profile photo on Pinterest, and I was able to look at that picture, and it was for something within their local community. It was a Facebook page about praying for Sarah. It was this girl who was going through some health challenges and needed some extra support from the community. And I was able to locate the various individuals that I found on Pinterest, along with my test taker and who is managing it. And that is one way I was able to successfully identify this unknown DNA match by using my different tricks with Pinterest, Facebook, etc. to identify the match. And you can also get hints from the account profile. So you can get the location of the individual here. Sometimes there's a profile photo, so you can compare that to Facebook, for example. You get an age. Sometimes you get surnames of interest. This will also be found on this account profile here. Sometimes you get areas of interest, and they might also have other trees that you can use for hints to see if you can identify your DNA match. And I have another individual here. We're going to call him today Randy Morrison. And I really, really needed to successfully identify this DNA match. He is 97 centimorgans, so quite a high match for the project that I was working on. I knew that he was going to be the key to my project, but I was so far unsuccessful on identifying this DNA match. He had no tree. He also had a daughter that they had the same surname. So I knew that the person was likely his daughter. She even had a profile picture, but no tree. And I was just still unable to identify this DNA match. I was very sad. But then Ancestry came out with their Pro Tools. With Ancestry Pro Tools, they tell you how your DNA matches are related to each other. So for example here, we have Mike Miller. He is related to Sarah at 20 centimorgans, and he's also related to Randy at 23 centimorgans. So I can see how Mike matches both the test taker and the shared match. So how I was able to identify Randy is I went page by page of my DNA matches here, looking for an individual that had a high number of shared centimorgans. With a higher number of shared centimorgans, the higher the likelihood that the individuals know each other in real life, and they might be, Facebook friends or friends on Instagram. So I could, work to see if I could identify them that way. And I came across this individual, Sam King here. You can see he has a profile picture. But what was really exciting for me was he was a 445 centimorgan match to Randy. That's a very high number of centimorgans. I recommend, 400 and higher, just, looking to see if you can find, the highest amount possible. And through Randy's Facebook, I was able to, through Sam's Facebook, I was able to successfully identify Randy and build out his tree. And in some cases, these individuals may have trees. I have come across a mother who has no tree, but a daughter who does have a tree. So I was able to successfully identify the mother with the daughter's tree. So the Ancestry Pro Tools can be a very helpful tool, especially if you so far haven't been able to identify the DNA match any other way. Tips and tricks for success. You are going to want to pay attention to locations of interest, and you're also going to follow the locality of interest. So let's say, I know that the research problem that I am currently trying to solve is an early Southern United States research problem. I am not going to follow the lines that recently immigrated from Italy or Germany, for example. Those are not going to be lines of interest for me because I have an early Southern United States research problem. And if you have a paternal or maternal research problem, you are going to want to pay attention to those paternal matches if you have a paternal problem, or maternal matches if you have a maternal problem. And sometimes you will see matches that are undefined. The ancestry system is unable to determine if it's a paternal match or a maternal match. You are still going to want to pay attention to those undefined matches, because it's just because the system was unable to split them doesn't mean that you can't. And those can be very helpful and valuable in your research, those undetermined side matches here. And we're going to go back to our tree now, and we're going to show just one or two more examples of following the hints here. So here I'm looking for some additional information. What one here that might be very promising to us is this U.S. Newspaper's obituary. And I'm going to open it in a new tab because that is just easier for me to see, like I showed earlier. And what is very interesting for us, it tells us the exact newspaper that we are looking at, the Daily Herald. And we have parents, Robert and Sarah, and some additional information. And with newspapers.com, a paying newspaper here. So if you don't have a subscription here, it will require you to either start a free trial or get a subscription. But sometimes these newspapers are available at different sites. If you remember what I showed earlier, this Utah digital newspapers here, I am going to see if I can use this information from this newspaper index to be able to find my obituary that I'm looking for. So I'm looking for Albert Thomas here. I'm going to add in his name. And we also have some additional filters here at the left-hand side of the screen. So I know that he died in 1974. So I'm going to drag and change the year to the appropriate year. Here we go. And I'm just going to search 1974. And then I'm going to press update here at the bottom of the year box. And I still get a lot of results, over 1,000 here. And we had a name of the newspaper. It was the Daily Herald. So I can see if I can go through, this list here to see if, the Daily Herald comes up. But a very good tip for newspapers is to add quotation marks around the name. So it will only search with those two words together. So it'll search for Albert Thomas bound together. And then I'm going to update my search here. And I get only 26 results this time. And Albert died in December. So I'm going to want to make sure if I just look for papers with the December date. And he died around the 15th of December. So I would go through here and see if I can find any paper that has, the 15th, around the 15th of December date. And I did not see any results here. So, but we also have Albert M. Thomas. So I'm going to go back and add the M. Here we go. This looks quite promising. They're all around that date that we saw for the other paper. So I'm going to click on Provo Daily Herald here. And it gives us some information here. I'm going to blow it up so we can see it quite better here. It tells us for Albert M. Thomas, funeral services will be conducted on Tuesday at 11 a.m. So I know that with the keywords Albert M. Thomas, I have found some better results here. So I would go through and see if I can find, click on all of these papers to see what information that they have for the various results here. Let's see what we can find for this one. Oh, this one is just about the same information. It tells us that, about the funeral services in Provo, Utah. And there is going to be one last result here, this Orem Geneva Times, to see if we get some additional information here. And this is also the same clipping. So I would go through and, play with the keywords to see what other additional, newspapers that I can find. But this is just one way example of using, newspapers to see, what, relevant information that you can find. As we know, he likely has, a larger, obituary. So, for example, I could type his wife's name in to see if I can, get some, additional results. Lily May or Lily Thurman, perhaps, to see which results that we get. Or just search for Thurman here. And then I would want to, do some more filtering to get some less results. But this is just one example of how you can use obituaries to be helpful for your search here. And then we have a few additional notes before we open it up to questions. When you are finished, you are going to want finish with your DNA research, and you have found the appropriate connection. You're going to want to add this connection to your database and tree to share, the research and the information that you found with others. And it's going to be very valuable to help future researchers. And you're going to want to, evaluate all of your DNA matches and, continue to build out the quick trees for all of them. The DNA matches are going to be your evidence along with their trees here. And now we're going to open up the time for questions here. And I'm also going to want to note that you're going to want to make sure that you have the handout for this class. It dives in a little bit deeper to some of the topics that we have covered, and that can be a great resource for you. So yeah, now we have some time for questions.
Okay, Charlotta is having some issues with sound. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can, Susie.
Thank you, Jaleese. That was a wonderful presentation. Thank you. We will now have time to answer questions that you might have on how to build quick trees. I will give everyone some time to type their questions in the comment section. Before we get to the questions, just a few things to mention. The next class taught by the Family Search Library will be Pilgrims, Puritans, and Peacers, researching early New England settlers, 1620 to 1700, which will be taught on this Thursday, October 17th at 10 o'clock a.m. Mountain Daylight Time. View upcoming webinars in the Family Search Library classes and webinars page. And finally, we would love to get your feedback on this presentation. The link to our survey will be posted in the comments section. It looks like we have a question from Roseanne, and we might have a few more.
Okay, perfect.
Roseanne Young asked, how do we find the obit information for those that, I'm not sure it's phrased completely, so give me 1 second. She's saying that they might not have an obituary because of cremation instead of burial, so there's not going to be a funeral announcement, but there could still be an obituary.
Yeah, there could still be an obituary. I would at least, search for it on Google, type in their name, where they were living, what year they died, and to Google and see, if anybody, posted an obituary. I would still look for one.
Earlier in the conversation, Grace Daniels Bates asked if Ancestry is, because Ancestry is a subscription program, do you need multiple subscriptions in order to build multiple trees? We did answer that question in the chat. The answer was you do not need multiple subscriptions. You can actually have multiple trees within a single Ancestry account.
Yep.
Heidi just asked, can I build a quick tree on MyHeritage?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can. I typically, don't use MyHeritage to, build the quick trees, but yeah, you are able to use MyHeritage for that.
Roseanne said thank you. Earlier in the conversation, Roberta Fox asked, what criteria do you use to choose the couple to whom you attach the floating match? And I'm going to give you some time to answer that.
Yeah, so in this case, I just chose, my couple here because, they were very far removed from, today to, protect the privacy of these individuals. But how I, do it today is I would, start, with the DNA match. So in this case, we'll name him John Doe. I would go ahead and add him, to the tree, and then I would, build out his tree, and then, create, a floating tree. But I'm currently working on the DNA case for my grandmother. So my grandma is the first person in my tree, and along with her parents, and she is my, my one main person because she is the person I'm currently working to solve, the DNA mystery for. And then I add, all of her DNA matches as the floating matches. So you can do it that way, the test kit, who are you using the DNA test? They can be your first person in your tree, and then, add their parents, and they can kind of be, the first person that you see. And then all of their DNA matches can be, the floating matches within your ancestry tree. So you could do it that way. That's typically how I do it. But yeah, I don't pick a couple. I did it in this case, to protect the privacy of these individuals and to show, the live example of how to build a little bit on how to build a quick tree. But yeah, you're going to want to start with the DNA matches themselves.
Okay, and I see the question from Diana, but because it kind of builds on what you just said, I'm going to go ahead and bring up Beverly's question. She says she's not clear on how you connect the two examples of DNA matches. And I think there's a couple of different pieces to that answer, so I wanted to make sure you had time to answer it.
Yeah, so the two, like the how to create a floating individual, or
I think this one is kind of how do you do the analysis piece. So there's different steps to the analysis piece, and I think that's what she's trying to ask. Beverly, if that's not correct, go ahead and reply in the chat so we can see it.
Yeah, so for the analysis, it's kind of another topic almost. But in this case, you're always, it depends on, what you're looking for with the DNA, what kind of project you're wanting to solve. But typically, the DNA, cases that I do, I'm looking to find, the most recent common ancestor. And then once I have, identified the most recent common ancestor, I am then going to do, the descendancy research down and see if I can find, where, my ancestor or the person I'm looking for, fits within that, analysis there. So typically it's looking for the most recent common ancestor and seeing, where you fit, is it the right time period? Is it the right location? Is it the right generations, to see, where, you would fit within that most recent common ancestor.
Okay, I think I'm going to chime in just a little bit, Jaleese.
Yeah, go for
So
it.
there's kind of stages to it. So the first piece is when you look at the matches, do they have an already identified couple in their tree that is the same?
That's
if
true.
they do not, do they have a surname that is the same in a specific location? If not, then actually what you're going to do is do the quick tree build looking for how they're connected.
Yep.
Does that sound about right, Jaleese?
Yeah, for sure. And that way, you would get that, after the clustering. So, we build, the quick trees after the clustering. So, with, the clustering, we have, there's a class linked in your handout to watch from a past DNA day. But, as Susie mentioned, once you do your clustering, if you see, a location or, also a surname of interest, you would, then build out, that cluster to see, within those matches, if you can find most recent common ancestor, if you don't already see one within their trees.
Jaleese, in my experience, it's so possible that as you do your build, you will find people that you didn't really know fit there because they're identified as parts of the family, in these obituaries.
Yes.
Is that similar to your
sure.
experience?
Yep.
You mentioned is there a handout? Is that what you were talking about?
Uh-huh.
Okay. And then Diana asked, is there another family search stream that expands on this topic? Diana, if you would respond in the chat, I'm fairly certain you mean on building quick trees, but there is a whole bunch of information in family search on DNA and DNA analysis. So I'm going to let you, Jaleese, pick up the rest of that answer.
Yeah, so we did a DNA day back in, what was it, April, I believe. And I taught this topic. So if you wanted to see a different, a little bit different way, I taught it a little bit different there. You could go ahead and watch that. There's also, other DNA days on different topics. So for example, clustering, white DNA, all sorts of different topics. So you can go ahead and look at, that information from, past DNA days. All of those webinars are still available to view. And so, yeah, that's what I would recommend to get some more webinars about DNA.
And Diana, I would also watch for what's coming in Roots Tech, and the next DNA will be in April. They have DNA Day every year on April 25th, I believe. Yeah. Unless it's a Sunday. I don't see any more questions in the chat. I'll wait another minute and see if some show up. For those of you who want to know this, that it is in the chat, but that we do offer online research consultations where we meet with you through Zoom. And we do have DNA-based online consultations as part of that. Roseanne just asked, where in Family Search do we sign up for a free consultation? Jaleese, do you want to can you do that live without
I can do it live.
Being weird? I think that might be a really great idea.
So here I'm just at familysearch.org. Typically, I do just you Google it, but you can click on community, and you can get to online consultations this way. It says free research consultation found at the quick links here at the right hand side of the page here. And it takes me to one tab where you are able to go ahead and select your area of interest for which consultation that you would like. So most show that one more time because I did a little fast. So we have a question mark here at the top right hand side of the screen here, and then we get this little help box here. And then I'm going to select community. And now I'm at the family search community. And at the right-hand side of the page here, we have quick links. And you see that there is the free research consultation. And then you are now able to select, which consultation and area, of interest that you are looking for. Like if you selected Europe, for example, you see a bunch of, immigration ones about Jewish ancestors in United Kingdom. We have Belarus, Belgium, etc.
Will you go ahead and show the different categories in DNA?
Yep. So we have DNA basics. So if you have, a more, basic question about DNA, but if you are looking to solve, a research problem, let's see, change selection. I want to change here, DNA. So you have DNA basics. So it's, a more, basic question. Maybe it's getting started. What can we do? I've done some work, but I need, some more help. And if you have, a tougher problem, you can do solving research problems with DNA. And if you would like to do, visual phasing, we also offer visual phasing consultations.
All right, that is all we have time for this morning. I don't see any other questions. Dan, I do see your statement. We're going to have to end before answering that.